My name is Zoe, and 3 weeks ago, I found my childhood best friend's diary buried beneath the old oak tree behind Westview High School. What I read inside made my blood run cold, because according to these pages, Scarlett Morrison didn't die in a car accident 5 years ago, like everyone believes. She was murdered. And the killer? Someone I've been sharing dinner with every Sunday for the past decade. Hey everyone! If this story is already giving you chills, smash that like button right now and subscribe to Formidable Revenge channel for more shocking true crime and formidable revenge stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Share this video with your friends and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from all over the USA. I never intended to become Westview's amateur detective. 3 weeks ago, I was just another 28-year-old working at Murphy's Coffee House on Main Street, living in the same small town where I'd grown up, content with my predictable life. But sometimes the past refuses to stay buried, especially when it's literally buried 6 feet under the school playground. The discovery happened during the renovation of Westview High. They were expanding the parking lot, and the construction crew had to remove several old trees. I was walking home from work when I saw the chaos: yellow tape, police cars, and a crowd of curious neighbors. Officer Brandon Clark was trying to keep everyone back, but I recognized that particular oak tree. Scarlett and I used to sit under it during lunch breaks, sharing secrets and dreams. Something metallic caught my eye in the upturned dirt. While everyone was distracted by the commotion near the school building, I slipped closer to the tree. Half buried in the roots was a small metal box, the kind we used to hide our treasures in as kids. My heart pounded as I recognized Scarlett's handwriting on the side: property of SM Keep Out. I slipped the box into my jacket and walked home as casually as possible, but my hands were shaking. Back in my apartment above the coffee shop, I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was Scarlett's diary, a few Polaroid photos, and a flash drive. The diary entries from her final weeks were terrifying. She discovered something about the mayor's son, Trevor Hamilton, something that would have destroyed his family's reputation and his father's political career. The last entry, dated the day before her supposed accident, made my stomach drop. I'm meeting Trevor tonight at Riverside Bridge. He says he wants to explain everything, make things right. I'm scared, but I have to give him the chance to do the right thing. If something happens to me, look for the evidence I've hidden. The photos will prove everything. I stared at those words until they blurred. Scarlett Morrison, my fearless, brilliant best friend, had been silenced before she could expose the truth. And Trevor Hamilton, the man I'd been dating for 6 months, the man who'd been consoling me about my grief over losing Scarlett, was her killer. The Polaroids showed Trevor with unmarked packages at the old Riverside warehouse, meeting with known drug dealers from the next county. The timestamps proved he'd been running drugs through Westview using his father's political connections for protection. Scarlett had stumbled onto his operation and paid the ultimate price. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor: "Hey beautiful, dinner at Romano's tonight? I have something special to tell you." I stared at the message, rage building in my chest like a wildfire. This monster had killed my best friend, attended her funeral, comforted her family, and then had the audacity to seduce me while keeping his bloody secret. He thought he was safe, protected by his family's power and the town's willingness to look the other way. But Scarlett had been smart. She'd left me a roadmap to justice, and I was going to follow it straight to Trevor's downfall. The question was, how many other people in this town knew the truth and chose to stay silent? Playing normal with Trevor that night at Romano's was the hardest performance of my life. He sat across from me, looking devastatingly handsome in his navy suit, talking about expanding his father's real estate business while I fantasized about watching him burn for what he'd done to Scarlett. "You seem distracted tonight," Trevor said, reaching across the table to take my hand. His touch, which once sent butterflies through my stomach, now made my skin crawl. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I forced a smile. "Just tired from work. Mrs. Murphy had me pulling double shifts this week." The lies flowed easier than I expected. Maybe because I was finally understanding how effortless deception came to him. Trevor Hamilton had built his entire life on lies, and he was a master craftsman. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that," he said, his thumb stroking my knuckles. "Dad's been talking about funding some local businesses. Maybe it's time you opened your own coffee shop instead of working for someone else." The casual way he offered to buy my dreams made me sick. Blood money, all of it. Everything the Hamilton family owned was built on corruption, drugs, and murder. And here he was, trying to make me complicit in his empire. "That's incredibly generous," I managed, my voice steady despite the fury burning in my chest. "Your family has always been so good to this town." Trevor's smile was pure poison wrapped in charm. "We try to take care of our own. Speaking of which, I've been thinking about us a lot lately." He reached into his jacket pocket, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might pull out a weapon. Instead, he produced a small velvet box that made my blood turn to ice. "Zoe, I know we've only been together 6 months, but I've never felt this way about anyone." He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring that probably cost more than most people in Westview made in a year. "Will you marry me?" The restaurant seemed to spin around me. Other diners were starting to notice, some pulling out their phones to record what they thought was a romantic moment. The pressure was suffocating. In a town like Westview, saying no to a Hamilton proposal wasn't just rejecting a man, it was rejecting the most powerful family in 3 counties. But all I could think about was Scarlett, cold in her grave while her killer was trying to make me his wife. "Trevor, I stammered, buying time while my mind raced. "This is so sudden." "I know it seems fast, but life is short," he said, his voice dropping to that intimate tone that used to make me melt. "Look what happened to your friend Scarlett. 1 minute she was here, the next she was gone. We can't waste time when we find something real." The way he said Scarlett's name, so casual and dismissive, like she was just another casualty of life instead of his victim, made me want to scream. But I couldn't blow my cover. Not yet. I needed to be smart about this, the way Scarlett had been smart about gathering evidence. "Yes," I whispered, the word tasting like ashes in my mouth. Trevor's face lit up with triumph as he slipped the ring onto my finger. The weight of it felt like shackles. The restaurant erupted in applause as other diners realized what was happening. Trevor stood up and pulled me into his arms, kissing me deeply while cameras flashed around us. "I love you so much, Zoe," he murmured against my lips. "You're going to make me the happiest man alive." The irony was devastating. He was already the happiest man alive because he'd gotten away with murder. And now he thought he was securing his perfect cover by marrying his victim's best friend. Later that night, I sat in my apartment staring at the engagement ring and fighting waves of nausea. The local news was already running the story: mayor's son engaged to local coffee shop manager. They made it sound like a fairy tale, the powerful Hamilton heir falling for the sweet ordinary girl from the wrong side of town. But I knew the truth. Trevor hadn't chosen me because he loved me. He'd chosen me because I was Scarlett's best friend, the one person who might have asked uncomfortable questions about her death. By seducing me, making me his girlfriend and now his fiancée, he'd effectively silenced any suspicions I might have had. It was brilliant, really. Psychopathic, but brilliant. My phone buzzed with congratulations from friends and family, but all I could focus on was Scarlett's diary, hidden in my bedroom closet. I had evidence of Trevor's drug operation, but proving he'd murdered Scarlett would be harder. The diary showed she was scared and meeting him the night she died, but that wasn't enough to convince the police to reopen a case involving the mayor's son. I needed more. And I had a terrible feeling that meant getting closer to Trevor, not further away. The engagement ring caught the light from my bedroom lamp, sending rainbows across the wall. Beautiful and deadly, like everything else in the Hamilton family. The Hamilton family estate sat on 50 acres outside Westview, a sprawling monument to generations of corruption disguised as respectability. As Trevor's fiancée, I was now welcome in the inner sanctum, and what I discovered there made Scarlett's murder look like just the tip of a very dark iceberg. Mayor Richard Hamilton was a silver-haired snake who'd been running Westview like his personal kingdom for 25 years. His wife, Patricia, was the kind of Southern belle who smiled sweetly while sharpening knives behind her back. And their younger son, Connor, was a 22-year-old college dropout who spent his trust fund on cocaine and expensive cars. "Welcome to the family, dear," Patricia said, air-kissing my cheeks during Sunday dinner. "Trevor has told us so much about you. Such a tragedy about your friend. What was her name?" "Scarlett." The casual cruelty in her voice told me everything I needed to know. The Hamilton family didn't just know about Scarlett's murder, they'd helped cover it up. "Yes," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "She was like a sister to me." "Well, sometimes God calls the young ones home for reasons we can't understand," Patricia continued, cutting into her prime rib with surgical precision. "We just have to trust his plan." Richard nodded solemnly. "Tragic accident. That bridge has always been dangerous, especially at night. We've been meaning to get better lighting installed." The lies flowed so smoothly between them that I realized this wasn't their first cover-up. How many other accidents had the Hamilton family orchestrated over the years? How many other families had grieved their children while the Rayall killers sat in this dining room, passing the mashed potatoes and discussing property taxes? Connor, high as usual, wasn't quite as skilled at the family game. "Remember when Scarlett used to babysit us?" he said, his words slightly slurred. "She was always asking weird questions about Dad's meetings and stuff. Nosy little." "Connor," Trevor's voice cut through his brother's rambling like a blade. "Show some respect." But Connor was too stoned to read the warning in his brother's eyes. "I'm just saying, some people should mind their own business. Look what happens when they don't." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's fork clinked against her plate. Richard's jaw tightened. And Trevor's hand, resting on my thigh under the table, squeezed hard enough to bruise. "Connor's had too much wine," Patricia said finally, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Perhaps he should retire early." After dinner, Trevor walked me to my car, his arm around my waist in what looked like an affectionate gesture but felt more like a warning. "My family really likes you," he said, but his eyes were cold. "Connor sometimes says stupid things when he's been drinking. Don't pay attention to him." "Of course not," I replied, playing the role of the understanding fiancé. "He's just young." Trevor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Exactly. Young and stupid. It runs in families sometimes." The threat was subtle but clear: stay stupid, or end up like Scarlett. But Trevor had underestimated me. That night, I used the flash drive from Scarlett's box to access her cloud storage account. She'd been more thorough than I'd realized, documenting months of suspicious activity around the Hamilton family's various businesses. The photos were damning. Trevor and Connor meeting with known criminals at the Riverside warehouse. Richard taking envelopes of cash from men in expensive suits. Patricia laundering money through her various charity foundations. The Hamilton family wasn't just involved in drug trafficking, they were running the entire operation, using Westview as their base of operations. But the most chilling discovery was a video file dated 2 days before Scarlett's death. She'd hidden a camera in the warehouse and recorded a conversation between Trevor and a man I recognized as Vincent Carlucci, a known enforcer from Chicago. "The girl's becoming a problem." Trevor's voice was crystal clear on the recording. "She's asking questions, taking pictures. My father's worried she's going to take this to the FBI." "Want me to handle it?" Carlucci's gravelly voice sent chills down my spine. "No, this needs to look natural. I'll take care of it myself. Make it look like an accident." "You sure you got the stomach for it, college boy?" Trevor's laugh was pure ice. "You'd be surprised what I can stomach when my family's future is at stake." I had him. Finally, I had proof that Trevor Hamilton had murdered Scarlett Morrison in cold blood. But as I sat in my apartment at 2 a.m., staring at the evidence that would destroy the most powerful family in Westview, I realized something terrifying: they would never let me live long enough to expose them. The engagement ring on my finger felt like a target now, marking me as someone who knew too much and was getting too close to the truth. Just like Scarlett. My phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. "Can't sleep. Thinking about our future together. I love you, Zoe. Always remember that." But all I could hear was his voice on that recording, coldly planning my best friend's murder. The game had changed. It wasn't enough to expose Trevor anymore. I needed to destroy the entire Hamilton empire before they realized I knew their secrets. And I was starting to realize that might mean becoming just as dangerous as they were. The plan came to me during Scarlett's birthday, what would have been her 29th. I stood at her grave in Westview Cemetery, surrounded by flowers and lies, while Trevor held my hand and played the supportive fiancé. Watching him pretend to mourn the woman he'd murdered ignited something primal and furious in my chest. "She would have loved seeing us together," Trevor said softly, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "She always said you deserved someone who would treat you like a queen." The manipulation was masterful. Even now, knowing what I knew, part of my brain wanted to believe him. He was handsome, charming, seemingly devoted, the perfect boyfriend on paper. But I'd seen behind the mask now, and the monster underneath was hungry for more blood. "I miss her so much," I whispered, letting real tears fall. They weren't for the lie he was telling, but for the truth I couldn't speak. "Sometimes I dream about her. She tries to tell me something, but I can never understand what she's saying." Trevor's grip on my hand tightened imperceptibly. "Dreams can be cruel that way. Maybe you should talk to someone about them." Translation: maybe you should get medicated and stop thinking so clearly. That night, I made my decision. The Hamilton family had spent decades using their power to hurt people and cover up their crimes. They'd murdered my best friend and were now trying to manipulate me into silence through fake love and empty promises. But they'd made one crucial mistake: they'd taught me exactly how dangerous they could be, which meant I needed to be more dangerous. I started by becoming the perfect fiancé. I helped Patricia plan charity galas that laundered drug money. I accompanied Richard to city council meetings where he strong-armed local business owners into compliance. I let Trevor take me to family meetings where they discussed territory disputes and profit margins like they were talking about the weather. The deeper I went into their world, the more evidence I gathered. Hidden cameras in my purse recorded conversations. My phone captured photos of documents left carelessly on Richard's desk. I memorized names, dates, and locations, building an airtight case against the entire family. But I also discovered something that changed everything. I wasn't their first victim from within. Trevor's previous fiancée, a girl named Melody Reeves, had supposedly died in a hiking accident 3 years ago. But when I dug deeper, I found the same pattern. She'd been asking questions, getting too close to family secrets. Her accident happened just 2 weeks before she was supposed to marry Trevor. That's when I realized the full scope of their evil. The Hamilton family didn't just kill people who threatened them from the outside, they eliminated threats from within their own inner circle. Trevor's pattern was clear: seduce a potential threat, isolate them by making them family, then eliminate them when they learned too much. I was supposed to be wife number 2 in his collection of dead women. The revelation should have terrified me, but instead it crystallized my resolve. Scarlett and Melody weren't the only victims. They were just the ones I knew about. How many other young women had died because they'd fallen in love with a Hamilton man and learned too much? I decided to turn their own playbook against them. If they wanted to play happy family while planning my murder, I would be the most loving, supportive daughter-in-law imaginable while systematically destroying them from the inside. The opportunity came during Connor's latest drug-fueled crisis. He'd been arrested for possession, and Richard was using his influence to make the charges disappear. But I'd recorded Connor bragging about the family operation, and I anonymously sent the audio to every news outlet in the state. The story exploded across local media: mayor's son caught in drug scandal. Suddenly, Richard couldn't make Connor's charges disappear without looking corrupt himself. The family was forced to let Connor face consequences for the first time in his life. Trevor was furious, pacing the Hamilton estate like a caged animal. "Someone's targeting our family," he snarled during an emergency family meeting. "This isn't random. Someone knows too much." "Maybe it's time to clean house again," Patricia suggested, her voice as cold as winter morning. "We've gotten careless." They were talking about killing people in the same tone most families use to discuss grocery lists. And they had no idea their future victim was sitting right there, recording every word. "Not yet," Richard said finally. "We don't know who's behind this. If we start eliminating people randomly, we'll only draw more attention." But Trevor was already looking at me with new suspicion. "Zoe, honey, you haven't noticed anyone asking questions about our family, have you? Maybe someone who knew Scarlett." The test was obvious. He was probing to see if I knew anything or if someone else was feeding me information. One wrong answer could sign my death warrant. "Just the usual small-town gossip," I replied, adding a nervous laugh. "You know how people love to talk when they're bored. But I never listened to that nonsense." Trevor's smile returned, but his eyes remained calculating. "Good girl. It's important to stay loyal to the people you love." As I drove home that night, I realized the stakes had escalated beyond my personal revenge. The Hamilton family was preparing to kill again, and they wouldn't stop until they'd eliminated every possible threat to their empire. But I had advantages they didn't know about. I had evidence they couldn't destroy. And most importantly, I had something they'd never possessed, the moral certainty that comes from fighting for justice instead of protecting corruption. The war was coming, and I intended to win it. The closer we got to the wedding, the more dangerous the game became. Patricia had transformed into a hurricane of silk and passive aggression, micromanaging every detail of what she called the social event of the year. She'd booked the Westview Country Club, hired a photographer from Atlanta, and invited half the state's political elite. To everyone else, it looked like a fairy tale wedding. To me, it felt like planning my own funeral. "You must be so excited," gushed Rebecca Thompson, Patricia's best friend and the wife of the county sheriff. We were at my final dress fitting, surrounded by mirrors that reflected endless versions of me in virginal white. "Trevor is such a catch. You're the luckiest girl in Westview." Lucky. The word tasted like poison. I was lucky to be marrying my best friend's killer. Lucky to be joining a family of murderers and drug dealers. Lucky to be the next name on their hit list. "I can hardly believe it's real," I replied, which was the first honest thing I'd said all day. The truth was, I'd spent the last month walking a tightrope between maintaining my cover and gathering the evidence I needed to destroy them all. Every family dinner was a performance. Every conversation with Trevor was carefully choreographed to keep him believing I was his devoted, naive fiancée. Every smile felt like it was cutting my face. But the evidence I was collecting was devastating. I documented the Hamilton family's entire criminal enterprise, drug trafficking routes through 3 states, money laundering operations worth millions, and a network of corrupt officials who'd been bought and paid for over decades. I had photos, recordings, financial documents, and witness statements. Most importantly, I had Vincent Carlucci's phone number from Trevor's contacts, and I'd been secretly recording his conversations with the family. The wedding was set for Saturday. My plan was to expose them all on Sunday, when they'd be too hungover and complacent to realize what hit them. I'd already prepared packages for the FBI, the DEA, and every major news outlet in the region. By Monday morning, the Hamilton Empire would be in ruins. But Trevor was getting suspicious. "You've been different lately," he said during our rehearsal dinner at Romano's. The entire wedding party was there, his groomsmen from college, my bridesmaids who still thought they were celebrating true love, and both our families pretending to be normal. "Different how?" I asked, cutting into my chicken parmesan with hands that weren't quite steady. "Distant. Like you're thinking about something else all the time." His green eyes, which once made my heart race, now reminded me of broken glass. Are you having second thoughts about us? The question hung in the air like a blade. Around us, conversation flowed normally, Connor bragging about his new Mustang, Patricia discussing flower arrangements, my mother gushing about grandchildren she'd never have. But I could feel the weight of Trevor's attention, the predatory focus that reminded me exactly what he was capable of. Just wedding nerves, I said, forcing a laugh. Every bride gets them, right? Of course, he replied, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. You know, I was thinking we should take our honeymoon somewhere remote. Maybe that cabin in the mountains where we went for our 6-month anniversary. Just the two of us, completely alone. My blood turned to ice water. The cabin was 50 miles from the nearest neighbor, surrounded by dense forest and accessible only by a single dirt road. It would be the perfect place to stage another accident, a young bride tragically killed in a fall while hiking with her devastated new husband. That sounds perfect, I managed, raising my wine glass in what looked like a toast but felt like sealing my own doom. Later that night, I sat in my apartment for what might be the last time, staring at all the evidence I'd gathered against the Hamilton family. Everything was ready. The packages were prepared, addresses written, stamps attached. All I had to do was survive the next 48 hours. But Trevor's questions tonight had shaken me. If he suspected I knew something, he might not wait until after the wedding to eliminate the threat. The Hamilton family had killed before when they felt cornered, and they wouldn't hesitate to kill again. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for, FBI agent Sarah Mitchell, who'd given me her card months ago when she'd asked routine questions about Scarlett's death. I'd never called her then, too scared and uncertain about what I knew. But now I had no choice. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. Agent Mitchell. This is Zoe Parker. We met last year about Scarlett Morrison's death. There was a pause. I remember. What can I do for you, Miss Parker? I need to meet with you tonight. I have evidence about her murder, and about a lot more. But if I don't give it to you now, I might not get another chance. Another pause, longer this time. Are you in immediate danger? I looked down at my engagement ring, thinking about Trevor's cold smile and the remote cabin where he wanted to take me. Yes. I think I am. Where can you meet me safely? Murphy's Coffee House on Main Street. I have keys. 1 hour. I'll be there. And Miss Parker? If you're really in danger, don't go home tonight. Find somewhere public to stay until we can sort this out. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks, hope. Tomorrow was my wedding day, but it might also be the beginning of justice for Scarlett and all the other victims of the Hamilton family's greed and cruelty. The game was almost over. And for the first time since I'd found Scarlett's diary, I believed I might actually win. Agent Mitchell stared at me across the coffee shop table, like I'd just told her aliens had landed in Westview. We'd been talking for 3 hours, going through every piece of evidence I'd collected against the Hamilton family. The photos, the recordings, the financial documents, it was all spread out between us like the pieces of a massive, horrifying puzzle. This is substantial, she said finally, her voice carefully neutral. But you understand what you're alleging here? Mayor Hamilton, his entire family, running a multi-state drug operation? That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's documented fact. I pointed to Scarlett's hidden camera footage of Trevor planning her murder. He killed my best friend because she found out about their operation. And tomorrow, after we're married, he's planning to kill me too. Agent Mitchell studied the evidence again, her expression growing darker. Why didn't you come to us sooner? Because I needed proof they couldn't deny or cover up. The Hamilton family owns half this town, including your boss, Sheriff Thompson. If I'd come forward with just suspicions, I'd be dead within a week. She nodded slowly. What do you want from the Bureau? I want to finish this. Tomorrow's wedding will have every major player in their organization present: suppliers, distributors, corrupt officials. It's the perfect opportunity to take them all down at once. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. We'll arrest Trevor tonight and what? He'll make bail within hours, and the rest of the family will disappear. You'll get one mid-level dealer while the real criminals escape justice. I leaned forward. Agent Mitchell, they've been killing people for years. Scarlett, Melody Reeves, probably others we don't even know about. If we don't stop them completely, they'll just rebuild somewhere else. She was quiet for a long time, studying my face. You're talking about going through with the wedding. Marrying a man you know is a killer. I'm talking about ending this. Once and for all. And if something goes wrong? If he suspects what you're doing? I touched the small recording device Agent Mitchell had given me. Then at least you'll have everything on tape. But it won't go wrong. Trevor thinks he's won. He thinks I'm just another naive victim who fell for his charm. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, perfect wedding weather, the kind of day that would look beautiful in photos and hide the rot underneath. I woke up in the FBI's safe house feeling like I was preparing for battle instead of marriage. Agent Mitchell and her team had worked through the night, coordinating with federal agencies in 3 states. They'd positioned agents throughout Westview, ready to move on my signal. All I had to do was walk down that aisle, say I do, and keep recording until we had enough evidence to convict everyone. Simple. Except I was about to marry the man who'd murdered my best friend. The bridal suite at the Westview Country Club buzzed with activity. Patricia supervised the hair and makeup artists like a general commanding troops. My bridesmaids fluttered around in their lavender dresses, chattering about the flowers and the music and how romantic everything was. My mother cried happy tears while adjusting my veil. None of them knew they were accessories to a crime scene. You look absolutely radiant, Patricia said, stepping back to admire me in my wedding dress. Trevor is going to lose his mind when he sees you. Lose his mind. If only she knew how literally accurate that might be. The ceremony was set for sunset in the country club's garden. As I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, I saw Trevor waiting at the altar in his perfect black tuxedo, surrounded by flowers and fairy lights that made everything look magical. He smiled at me with what appeared to be genuine love and adoration. For a moment, I almost forgot what he really was. He looked like every girl's dream groom, handsome, successful, devoted. The crowd of 300 guests sighed romantically as I approached. Several people wiped away tears. If they only knew they were watching a killer claim his next victim. Dearly beloved, the minister began, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Trevor Richard Hamilton and Zoe Marie Parker in holy matrimony. Trevor took my hands in his, and I had to fight not to flinch. His touch was warm and gentle, nothing like the hands that had pushed Scarlett Morrison off Riverside Bridge. But I could feel the recording device against my ribs, reminding me why I was really here. The couple has prepared their own vows, the minister announced. Trevor went first, speaking about love and devotion and forever in a voice that made half the women in the audience swoon. He talked about finding his soulmate, about building a life together, about protecting and cherishing me until death do us part. The irony was suffocating. Then it was my turn. I looked into his eyes and spoke my own vows, not the lies I'd rehearsed, but something closer to the truth. Trevor, when I met you, I never imagined how much you would change my life. You've shown me things about myself I never knew existed. You've taught me that people aren't always what they seem, and that love can be complicated. I paused, letting my voice catch with apparent emotion. I promise to stand by you no matter what comes to light. I promise to be loyal to you above everyone else, even when it's difficult. And I promise that we'll face whatever the future brings together, no matter how dark it gets. The crowd ate it up. But Trevor's eyes flickered with something that might have been suspicion. Or maybe recognition. For just a second, I wondered if he could hear the real meaning behind my words. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister announced. "You may kiss the bride." Trevor pulled me into his arms and kissed me deeply while the crowd erupted in applause. It was supposed to be the happiest moment of my life. Instead, all I could think about was that I'd just legally bound myself to my best friend's killer. And somewhere in the crowd, federal agents were watching, waiting for my signal to bring down the most powerful criminal family in 3 states. The reception was about to begin, and the real performance was just getting started. The reception felt like dancing on Scarlett's grave. The Hamilton family had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across the ballroom, champagne flowed like water, and a 12-piece orchestra played while 300 of Westview's elite celebrated my union with a murderer. I smiled and laughed and played the blushing bride while my new husband's hand rested possessively on my lower back. Trevor was in his element, accepting congratulations and making jokes about married life. To everyone watching, we were the perfect couple beginning our fairy tale life together. But I could feel the recording device against my ribs with every breath, and I knew Agent Mitchell's team was positioned throughout the room, waiting for my signal. "Mrs. Hamilton," Richard said, pulling me into a bone-crushing hug that reeked of expensive cologne and corruption. "Welcome to the family officially. We're so proud to call you daughter." Mrs. Hamilton. The name felt like a curse. I was now legally bound to the family that had destroyed my best friend and countless others. "Thank you, Dad," I replied, the word tasting like ash. "I'm honored to be part of such a successful family." The key word "successful" was my signal to Agent Mitchell that the operation was active. Somewhere in the crowd, I knew she'd heard it and was now recording everything. Connor stumbled over, already drunk despite it being barely 8 o'clock. "Welcome to the family business, sis," he slurred, swaying dangerously close to me. "Hope you're ready for the ride." "Connor," Trevor's voice carried a warning sharp enough to cut glass. "Why don't you get some fresh air?" But Connor was too drunk to read his brother's signals. "What? I'm just being friendly. Zoe's family now, right? She should know what she signed up for." Patricia appeared like a silk-wrapped viper, her smile deadly sweet. "Connor, darling, you've had enough champagne. Let's find you some coffee." As she dragged him away, I caught a glimpse of something that made my blood run cold. Vincent Carlucci, the Chicago enforcer from Scarlett's recording, was standing near the bar in an expensive suit, scanning the room like a predator evaluating prey. He wasn't here for the celebration. He was here for business. "Dance with me, Mrs. Hamilton," Trevor murmured in my ear, leading me to the center of the ballroom. The orchestra struck up a waltz as we moved together, and I felt like I was dancing with the devil himself. "Beautiful wedding," he said, spinning me gracefully. "Everything perfect, just like we planned." "Almost everything," I replied, letting my voice carry just enough edge to sound like typical newlywed nerves. Trevor's smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "I keep thinking about Scarlett. How she should have been here as my maid of honor. How much she would have loved seeing us together." I let real tears gather in my eyes. "Do you ever think about her?" His arms tightened around me almost imperceptibly. "Of course I do. She was important to you, which makes her important to me. But tonight's about our future, not the past." The song ended, and Trevor excused himself to speak with some business associates. I watched him join Richard, Connor, and 3 men I didn't recognize near the French doors leading to the terrace. Their body language screamed private conversation, and I knew this was my chance. I made my way toward them, staying close enough to the recording device could pick up their voices, but far enough away to look like I was simply mingling with guests. "Shipment arrives Tuesday night," one of the strangers was saying. "Same route as always, through the warehouse district." "Security?" Richard asked. "Handled. Your boy Trevor made sure the night shift will be looking the other way." My husband's voice was cold and businesslike. "Payments already been transferred. My wife and I will be on our honeymoon, so Connor will oversee the distribution. About your wife, Vincent Carlucci's gravelly voice made my skin crawl. You sure she's solid? Marrying into the family is one thing, but she was close to that Morrison girl. The mention of Scarlett's name made me freeze, pretending to adjust my bouquet while straining to hear every word. Zoe's not a problem, Trevor said firmly. She's loyal. Besides, what could she possibly know? She's a coffee shop worker, not a detective. Vincent laughed, a sound like broken glass. Famous last words. That's what you said about Morrison. Scarlett was different. She was actively investigating us, taking photos, asking questions. Zoe's just a sweet, naive girl who fell in love with the wrong man. The casual way he dismissed both Scarlett and me as disposable obstacles made my hands shake with rage. But I forced myself to stay calm, to keep recording, to gather every piece of evidence I could. Well, if she becomes a problem, Vincent continued, you know how to handle it. Same as before. It won't come to that, Trevor insisted. But if it does, yeah. I know what to do. They were talking about murdering me like they were discussing the weather. And suddenly I realized something terrifying. They already suspected I might be a threat. This entire conversation was a test, and I had no idea if I was passing or failing. I started to back away, but Connor's voice made me freeze again. What about that FBI agent who's been asking questions? Mitchell. My heart stopped. They knew about Agent Mitchell. Handled, Richard said dismissively. Sheriff Thompson made it clear that federal interference wouldn't be welcome in Westview. She's backed off. But that was impossible. I just met with Agent Mitchell last night. Unless. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Sheriff Thompson's wife Rebecca had been at my dress fitting yesterday. She'd seen me go into the coffee shop after hours. She could have easily called her husband, who would have warned Richard. Which meant the FBI operation might be compromised. Which meant I might be walking into a trap with no backup. Zoe. Trevor's voice made me jump. He was standing right behind me, his hand settling on my shoulder like a claim of ownership. Everything all right, sweetheart? You look pale. Just overwhelmed, I managed, turning to face him with what I hoped was a convincing smile. It's been such a long day. His green eyes studied my face with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Maybe we should call it a night soon. Start our honeymoon early. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Trevor was ready to move to the next phase of his plan, getting me alone and isolated where he could eliminate the threat I represented. That sounds perfect, I said, rising on my tiptoes to kiss his cheek. I love you so much, Trevor. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. The words felt like poison in my mouth, but they seemed to reassure him. His smile returned, warm and loving and completely fake. I love you too, Mrs. Hamilton. More than you'll ever know. As he walked away to continue his business conversation, I realized the full scope of my situation. The FBI operation was compromised. I was married to a killer who was planning my murder. And I was surrounded by 300 people who had no idea they were witnessing the last night of my life. But I still had the recording device. I still had evidence. And most importantly, I still had one advantage Trevor didn't know about. I knew exactly what kind of monster he was, while he still believed I was just another naive victim. The game wasn't over yet. But the stakes had just gotten a lot higher. At 11:47 p.m., as the last wedding guests stumbled to their cars and the cleanup crew began clearing champagne glasses, I realized I was completely alone with my husband's family of killers. Ready for that honeymoon, sweetheart? Trevor asked, his arm sliding around my waist with what looked like affection but felt like a restraint. The cabin's all prepared for us. The isolated mountain cabin where I was supposed to have my fatal accident. I could see it playing out in my mind, the grieving widower explaining to police how his new bride had tragically fallen while hiking, her body never recovered from the ravine below. "I can't wait," I replied, my voice steady despite the terror clawing at my chest. "Just the two of us, finally." But as we walked toward Trevor's black BMW, I spotted something that changed everything. Agent Mitchell's car was parked across the street, barely visible in the shadows. Either the operation wasn't compromised, or she was here unofficially. Either way, I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. "Actually," I said, stopping suddenly, "I left my grandmother's necklace in the bridal suite. It's the only thing I have left of her." Trevor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We can send someone back for it tomorrow." "Please? It'll just take a minute. It's irreplaceable." For a moment, I thought he might refuse. But then his mask of loving husband slipped back into place. "Of course, darling. Family heirlooms are important." We walked back into the empty country club, our footsteps echoing in the deserted hallways. The bridal suite was on the second floor, and as we climbed the stairs, I realized this might be my last chance to get a confession on recording. "Trevor," I said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you think Scarlett would have approved of us? Really?" He paused on the landing, studying my face in the dim light. "Why do you ask?" "I don't know. Sometimes I feel guilty, like I'm betraying her memory by being happy. She died so young, and here I am getting everything she'll never have: marriage, a family, a future." Trevor's smile was sharp enough to cut. "Scarlett wouldn't want you to feel guilty about being happy. She'd want you to live your life." "But what if she knew something about you that I don't? What if she died trying to protect me from making a mistake?" The question hung in the air between us like a blade. I could see Trevor calculating, trying to determine if this was innocent bride anxiety or something more dangerous. "What kind of mistake?" he asked carefully. "I found something," I whispered, my voice trembling with what looked like fear but was actually rage. After the rehearsal dinner, I was going through some of Scarlett's old things my mom gave me. There was a diary. Trevor went completely still. "What did it say?" "Things about you. About your family. About meetings and warehouses and—" I let my voice break convincingly. "Trevor, please tell me it's not true. Please tell me Scarlett was just paranoid or confused." For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. "You read her diary. Please, just tell me she was wrong about everything." "Oh, Zoe." Trevor's voice was soft and almost pitying. "Sweet, naive Zoe. Scarlett wasn't wrong about anything." The confession hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting it. Hearing him admit it so casually, so carelessly, made everything real in a way that evidence and recordings couldn't. "So it's true? The drugs, the money, all of it?" "All of it. My family has been running this operation for 20 years. We own this town, and everyone in it." "Including me?" Trevor's laugh was pure ice. "Especially you. Did you really think this was some romantic coincidence? That I just happened to fall in love with Scarlett's best friend? You were always part of the plan, Zoe. From the very beginning." The recording device against my ribs felt like it was burning through my skin. I was getting everything: a full confession from my husband about Scarlett's murder and their entire criminal operation. "What plan?" I whispered. Scarlett was getting too close to the truth. She had photos, recordings, evidence that could have destroyed us. But she also had you, her loyal best friend who would have asked uncomfortable questions if she just disappeared. So we had to be more creative. "You killed her." I eliminated a threat to my family. And then I eliminated the follow-up threat by making sure her best friend was too busy falling in love to ask awkward questions. The casual cruelty in his voice made my vision blur with rage. "You seduced me to cover up her murder. I seduced you to control the narrative. And it worked perfectly. For 2 years, you never questioned the official story about Scarlett's accident. You never demanded a deeper investigation. You never became a problem. Until now. Trevor nodded slowly. Until now. Finding that diary was unfortunate. But don't worry, sweetheart. I'll make sure your accident looks just as convincing as hers did. He stepped closer, and I realized we were completely alone in the empty building. No witnesses, no backup, no one to hear me scream. But I had one last card to play. You know what the funny thing is, Trevor? I asked, backing toward the window. Scarlett was smarter than you gave her credit for. What do you mean? She didn't just hide a diary. She uploaded everything to the cloud. Photos, recordings, financial documents. Everything you thought you destroyed when you killed her. Trevor's face went white. That's impossible. And she didn't just share it with me. She sent copies to journalists, federal agents, anyone who might be interested in the truth about the Hamilton family. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI. Want to guess what I've been doing for the past 6 months? The realization hit him like a physical blow. His perfect plan, his careful manipulation, his assumption that I was just another naive victim, all of it crumbling in real time. You've been working with the FBI? I've been working for justice. For Scarlett, for Melody Reeves, for every other person your family has murdered over the years. Trevor's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the monster underneath. You manipulative little witch. You played me. I learned from the best. He lunged for me, but I was ready. I threw myself toward the window, shattering the glass as federal agents burst through the door below. The recording device had transmitted everything to Agent Mitchell's team, and now they had a full confession. Trevor Hamilton was finally going down for murder. But as I fell through the broken window toward the darkness below, I realized my victory might be Pyrrhic. I'd exposed the truth about Scarlett's death and brought justice to her killers. The question was whether I'd live long enough to see them convicted. The last thing I heard before hitting the ground was Trevor screaming my name, whether in rage or desperation, I'd never know. I survived the fall with 3 broken ribs and a shattered collarbone, but I survived. Trevor Hamilton was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Richard and Patricia Hamilton are awaiting trial on federal racketeering charges. Connor turned state's evidence and is serving 15 years in minimum security. The Hamilton criminal empire is finished. I testified at Trevor's trial, playing the recordings of his confession for the jury. When they heard him casually admit to murdering Scarlett and planning to kill me, several jurors openly wept. Trevor never showed any remorse. Even when the guilty verdict was read, he stared at me with those cold green eyes and smiled like he'd won some secret game. I visit Scarlett's grave every Sunday now, bringing fresh flowers and updates about the trials. I tell her about the justice she never got to see, about the truth that finally came to light. Sometimes I think I can hear her voice on the wind, telling me she's proud of what I did. That she's finally at peace. The town of Westview is slowly healing from decades of corruption. New leadership, honest police, and businesses that don't have to pay protection money to operate. It's not the same place anymore. But maybe that's for the best. Some ghosts need to be laid to rest. And some secrets need to be dragged into the light, no matter how much it hurts. Because the truth, no matter how dark, is always better than living a beautiful lie. My name is Zoe Parker. I kept my maiden name after the divorce, and this is the story of how I brought down the most powerful criminal family in 3 states. For Scarlett. For justice. For everyone who believes that truth eventually wins, even when it takes longer than we'd like. The ghosts of Westview can finally rest in peace.